Neurotypical watch, the battling influencers. In this vlog, I am somewhat setting neurotypicals and autistics at odds with one another because frankly enough has been said about autism by neurotypicals that there's a need for some pushback. I've also acknowledged in chapter 3 that competition is part of our baser needs. So we need to understand that that is the case and that it's okay and that we need to engage in such competition in socially acceptable behavior. But also that ego, which is our means of deciding whether or not we can meet our needs under Freud's definition, has become something more where we meet our competition needs by judging other people. So we'll see this whole spectrum in this vlog. I'm going to have a look at Henry Gray Earl's vlog. He recently released a vlog called Clavicular is What Nietzsche Warned Us About. And in this vlog, he decries all the baser needs of human nature and he engages in competition with clavicular. And as you'll see, in fact, if you look at his vlog list, he does this somewhat himself.
Clavicular is what Nietzsche warned us about. Friedrich Nietzsche was a 19th century German philosopher who had a chilling warning about the future. If you gaze long enough into the abyss also gazes into you. Some people see Clavicular or Braden Peters as a self-help creator or an influencer to help you increase your looks. Other people see him as entertainment, but I see something much darker. I see the exact cultural sickness that Friedrich Nietzsche diagnosed over 100 years ago, fully optimized for the internet age. I see Nietzsche's worst fear, living, breathing, and streaming, contaminating the youth and future generations.
Is he dead?
Oh my, the world will surely fall apart because people are overly focused on their looks, right? So we have this dire warning issued forth. Now this isn't just a function of modern day influencing, it's part of human nature to regulate our baser needs, looking good, feeling good by looking good, reciprocating in how other people appreciate our appearances. These are all parts of human nature, and it's nothing new. The fact that YouTube is available in modern media makes it so easy to do, and that everyone can see it in an instant, maybe starts to bring things to a point and starts to become more dangerous than when Nietzsche was around. What it also does, however, is point out to people who might not have had access to this type of media. For instance, when I was a kid in the 1980s, I wouldn't have seen this. I wouldn't have understood what other people's baser needs are. And in fact, at that time, I might have seen this video or something like it. And as a very young autistic, my lesson would have been, well, my goodness, focusing on vanity is just an abhorrent thing. You absolutely can't do that. And I think I remember my grandmother reading me Narnia, and the lion god mauls and maims a young person for being overly focused on her looks. So this is what the sort of thing an autistic might encode, and then suddenly he or she has cut off part of his or her basic needs, however animalistic or vulgar it might be. It's part of our nature. So now this video on the one hand comes out and says, my goodness, again, this sort of thing shouldn't be going on. But on the other hand, this Henry Gray Earls has his own looks maxing videos. So taken together, we can't say that he's saying looks maxing is bad. You absolutely shouldn't do it. I think he's just warning here about the extremes of this nature. Let's have a look at his own experiences in that subject.
I'm not here to waste your time with long intros or fake advice. We're speedrunning your glow up with all the secrets that actually work, each more powerful than the last. The first secrets are going to level up how you look, but the last one goes way, way beyond just physical appearance. And really, it's the only way to become instantly more attractive right now in this moment.
So he's giving out advice on how to look max himself. He's got very pretty hair. He's a good-looking guy in and of himself. So I think his point in this particular video about clavicular that we're watching isn't that looks maxing itself is bad. It's that clavicular is taking things too far. Next, he goes on to state his concerns for what happens when we start to become overly focused about these sorts of things.
See, for much of human history, people believed that their lives pointed to something higher. God, truth, virtue, being a good person, something that was beyond themselves. And that higher meaning, it gave life direction. It made people share with others when they had little. It made people forgive each other when they wanted to seek revenge. It made people restrain themselves when anger would have felt better. It made sacrifice and living unselfishly make sense. But Friedrich Nietzsche believed that in modern times, people stopped believing in that higher source. And when the reason to believe in something higher fades, so does the reason to act beyond yourself. This is the birth of nihilism. Nihilism is the belief that life has no higher meaning or purpose.
Next, he goes on to point out how important virtue for virtue's sake is, relying on examples like forgiveness and forbearance in the face of anger and retaliation, baser animalistic needs. He then points out how Nietzsche was concerned that society has become more focused on baser needs rather than virtue. And of course, Nietzsche's time it's 2026 now, and Nietzsche's time was 100 plus years ago. So really this is a pattern in the human sphere where the older generation decries the relaxation of the norms of the previous generations. We've relaxed marijuana laws. You're still not allowed to do any drug you want to do. Women are allowed to work in the workplace, whereas Nietzsche's time it would have been unacceptable. 50 years ago even, it would have been ridiculous to some extent. And it's still a problem. Women in the workplace are still faced by similar challenges today. Of course, these norms used to be the means by which people competed with one another. And the competition, the dishonesty of the competition, often would wipe the virtue away.
Nietzsche warned that if there is nothing higher to aim at, then where does our energy go? He feared that instead of rising to create deep new inner values, people would turn inward. He feared that the self would become the new focus, the new project, the new thing to perfect. And with clavicular, we can see this clearly. When there is no shared sense of purpose, when we are not striving to become better internally, we strive to become better externally. Looks maxing or obsessively optimizing your image or status replaces the harder work of transcending yourself, of trying to become a better person. It begins to look like a kind of self-worship, building and polishing the image of the self as if it were something sacred, as if it were a god.
So this guy is relying very heavily on Nietzsche to assert a very ego-driven point that we ought not to be focused on vanity. I think ultimately, given the balancing of everything he's saying in his vlogs, he just means don't take it to an extreme. But if you listening to this vlog alone, it's like vanity is terrible. You absolutely ought not to do it. So this starts to raise hackles on me, and I start looking into what Nietzsche said, at least by virtue of Google AI search. And in fact, Nietzsche's philosophy seems to be the exact opposite of what this guy is saying. So this connects to chapter 4 of my vlog, where I talk about intellectualism and academia and the emperor's new clothes. I call out the need to avoid relying on facts espoused by an author who cites another author without going back and looking at those citations, because there's just tremendous dishonesty in it. And then chapter 6, misassuming intent. Now having this gross feeling of distrust in me, do I assume villainy on the part of the author? Do I assume that he's hijacking Nietzsche in order to monetize his blog? Or could he just be relying on mistaken Google AI searches himself? So let's have a look at Nietzsche's thoughts here. Nietzsche's statement, God is dead, is a metaphor indicating that the belief in the Christian God has become unbelievable, leading to a collapse of the moral and existential framework that supported Western civilization. So in Nietzsche's mind here, it seems that we've built a world of morality based on the notion of a God, which doesn't exist in Nietzsche's view, and certainly mine. I think 10% of autistics have religious belief. So I think I'm not alone in this respect. Nietzsche viewed nihilism as a profound psychological issue where individuals reject life due to belief in its lack of meaning, often covertly within seemingly meaningful values. So again, if we look at Freud's definitions of ego here, we have so many values, norms, mores, laws. Which of these are about actual virtue, and which of these are about competing with one another? And even the good ones, frankly, is the invocation of virtue, good virtue, always about good virtue, or does it become about dishonest competition? Nietzsche espouses that overcoming nihilism is done by affirming life without illusions. So you shouldn't need a god or you shouldn't need a priest to know what's right and wrong. Do unto others as if you would have them do unto you. Be and let be. Some of those are religious notions, but you don't need a god to tell you that, or you shouldn't at least. He defines covert nihilism. He pointed out that even values and beliefs that appear meaningful can be nihilistic if they ultimately lead to a negative evaluation of existence. So, in the context of my vlog, I'm going to say that this means he is pointing out how the use of virtue can lead to despair because it becomes a weapon and it blocks us from meeting our baser needs, even if those baser needs are harmless. Nietzsche advocates for a life-affirming philosophy, embracing life, chaos, adversity as pathways to personal growth and self-overcoming. And this is the critical part. His ideas encourage individuals to find meaning and value in their experiences rather than relying on external sources or on traditional beliefs. So is one such an experience Lux Maxing vlog? Is there really a harm in that? Maybe, if you take it too far. Should you go the exact opposite and become a cloistered nun or monk and not meet any of your baser needs? I mean, that's a choice up for you, right? But if other people are meeting their baser needs in a socially acceptable manner, as I think most Lux Maxers are, is there really a problem with that? Should these people come under attack? Or is the purpose of the attack to feather the nest of the individual who is issuing the attack? Nietzsche proposed solutions to overcome nihilism, including the will to power, where nihilism is a lack of desire to live. He emphasizes self-overcoming and the creation of one's own values, and the concept of the Übermensch, the overman, who embodies the affirmation of life and transcends conventional morality. Now this is starting to sound like Hitler, and apparently Hitler hijacked Nietzsche's thoughts to do what he wanted to do. So obviously you can take these things too far on either extreme. By embracing the ideas, individuals can reject despair and forge their own meaning in a world devoid of inherent value. Do you reject despair by meeting your needs? By meeting your needs, does that exclude you from being a good person, from doing good works in your environment? Nihilism, as understood by Nietzsche, influences modern philosophical thought that by challenge of the belief in inherent meaning and values, leading to a radical rejection of traditional moral principles and societal norms. So everything I'm looking at here is pointing the exact opposite of what this blogger is saying. Nietzsche, I think, probably would have approved of clavicular to some extent. Now, nihilism as a source of strength for an autistic. I found this vlog. Again, it's just another vlog. Someone that's actually studied this stuff. I think she may have done university studies in this. She's read Nietzsche for years. And at some point we should look at nihilism as a source of strength in addition to stoicism.
Where do you rank male beauty in like the kind of scale of what's important? Like
The highest.
like higher than like kindness or something.
Yeah.
Instead of asking how to grow in character, how to grow in depth, how to grow in truth, the focus shifts on how to look better, how to gain more followers, how to achieve more status, how to mog more people. And when meaning collapses, when nihilism grows, anyone or anything that stands in the way of the self can feel unimportant. This is evident in the viral clip where Clavicular runs over someone in a Tesla Cybertruck. On Christmas Eve 2025, he was live streaming while driving in Miami. A man whom Clavicular claimed had been stalking and harassing him jumped onto the back of his truck. Someone in the car told him to drive. Clavicular accelerated and the man slid off the hood and went under the truck. On stream, Clavicular said,
Is he dead?
All right, so now we're talking about competition in its various form. Mogging is where one looks maxer stands beside the other looks maxer for the purpose of invoking a comparison between the two. Who's the more pretty? So this seems vulgar, but honestly, is any harm done? How does that compare to going into a ring and knocking the heck out of someone else? Doing so is socially acceptable, so provided it's a sanctioned event and the other party consents. Why is this a problem? Is a competition about competition, in fact, the vulgarity? This guy, this vlogger, is misconstruing what happened in Clavicular's run-in with this stalker of his, and he says that he ran over his stalker and had no concern for him. Whereas in reality, if you look at the clip, the guy's on the side of the car and Clavicular drives away. No harm's done. He didn't go under the car. And then the police investigate and they found no wrongdoing, again because of claims of harassment. This guy is almost certainly not hurt, but this vlogger is making it sound like Clavicular is the devil. Is he?
Hopefully.
The man survived, no serious injuries were reported, and police investigated and ruled that there was no crime. Clavicular claimed that it was self-defense and the clip went viral. The moment is shocking, but more revealing than shocking. If Clavicular was truly trying to ascend, to grow on the inside, his first instinct wouldn't have been to run someone else over. Instead, his first instinct was the stream. Instead, his first instinct was himself. For Nietzsche, nihilism is when there's no higher value guiding your actions. When there's nothing above you, no moral anchor, no deeper purpose, the self becomes the higher thing. And when the self becomes the highest thing, everything else becomes secondary. Other people become in the background, obstacles become disposable, interruptions become threats. In that moment, the stream, the image, the performance mattered more than the person underneath the truck.
So now the vlogger is complaining that Clavicular is putting himself above everything and everyone else. Does that mean that Clavicular is excluding everything and everyone else? Does he exclude kindness from things that are important? Or does he just simply set looking good as the highest priority? I complained to a psychologist at one point about a narcissist in my work environment, and I was just constantly put off. In my mind, one forbears, one gives more than one takes in group work, one supports one's other colleagues, and that is what you're taught as a child. But that's not the reality of the corporate world. And what my psychologist at the time said was, a certain amount of narcissism is to be expected. So Clavicular is doing that. He didn't hurt anyone. Yeah, he's competing. That's a baser human need. It's about looks. Who cares?
That is nihilism in its purest form, that nothing is higher than the self. That is what Nietzsche feared. Not some dramatic evil, but a quiet shrinking of moral concern, where striving for something greater than ourselves is replaced by protecting and promoting ourselves.
Nietzsche's concern for nihilism was that it was leading to destruction of the self. He affirms rejecting despair and forging one's own values, which is exactly what Clavicular may well be doing. This guy, this vlogger, is on the attack on a false factual basis. Now, just because it's at odds with Nietzsche and he's relying with Nietzsche in a seemingly dishonest fashion doesn't mean he's necessarily wrong, but it's just difficult to palate. What is going on with this vlogger?
In one of Friedrich Nietzsche's books, Thus Spake Zarathustra, Nietzsche describes the last man. The last man is a type of person, not a villain, but a comfortable, self-focused figure that avoids true transformation. Friedrich Nietzsche describes the last man as someone who doesn't strive for true greatness. He optimizes within the world that he lives in. At first glance, Clavicular preaching about looks maxing seems to be like true transformation. It looks like discipline, and it looks like self-improvement. It looks like climbing upward. But Friedrich Nietzsche's idea of rising was never about ranking higher inside of a system. It was about overcoming yourself, creating new values, risking change, and confronting difficult truths.
So now he relies on Thus Spake Zarathustra and the concept of the last man. The last man embodies mediocrity and complacency, characterized by a desire for comfort and security while avoiding risks and challenges. Well, when are risks and challenges going to come up? They're going to come up when there are norms and values that are opposed to greatness. The last man is content with a life devoid of ambition or higher aspirations. Could looks maxing be one of those things? This figure reflects a lack of engagement with life's complexities, leading to a stagnant and unfulfilled existence. So what's the best way to lead a stagnant and unfulfilled existence? Not meeting your needs. The last man is a warning against a society that prioritizes comfort over the pursuit of higher ideals. So now the vlogger's sounding kind of right, at least. He argues that the archetype represents a decline in human spirit and potential as individuals become apathetic and lose the ability to dream or strive for forgiveness, or greatness rather. When do you become apathetic? When you're not meeting your needs. It challenges individuals to reflect on their own lives and the societal values they uphold, urging a move towards self-overcoming and the pursuit of greatness. Is what Clavicular is doing not just that?
Looks maxing is different. It's about adjusting the surface. It's about fine-tuning an image. It's about competing for status inside an already existing hierarchy. With Clavicular, this distinction becomes clear. He preaches about wearing lifts to get taller, wearing colored contacts if your eyes are brown. He preaches about using testosterone to gain more muscles. And for him, everything is framed as improvement. But the aim is really external validation, not internal transformation. Clavicular is what Nietzsche warned us about. Clavicular is the last man. A man who doesn't destroy the system, but optimizes to score better inside of it. Friedrich Nietzsche also warned that he who fights monsters should see it that he himself does not become a monster, and if you gaze long enough into the abyss also gazes into you. Here, Friedrich Nietzsche meant that in trying to conquer something dark, you can slowly become shaped by it.
If you stare long enough into the abyss stares back into you. What does this actually mean? I think he's got some of the ideas right. Again, I'm relying on a Google AI search. Serves as a profound warning about the psychological effects of focusing on darkness or evil. The concept emphasizes the risks associated with defining oneself solely by the opposition to negative forces. Nietzsche suggests that when individuals or movements concentrate excessively on battling evil, they may inadvertently adopt the very traits they oppose. This transformation can lead to moral decay or a shift in identity. So this vlogger is talking about the evils of looks maxing, and he's looks maxing himself. What?
In a recent extremely viral clip, an Arizona State University fraternity leader mocked Clavicular. It went extremely viral because looking better than Clavicular is apparently rare. In that moment, Clavicular, who built his whole brand on looking better than everyone else, was mocked or less visually appealing than this other guy. The same metric that he used to assert dominance by rating other people's looks became the metric that was used against him. This is the abyss that Friedrich Nietzsche warned us about. When identity is built on surface value,
So two types of competitions going on here. One, the looks maxers comparing one another side by side. No fists exchange, no angry words. Seems like it falls within the social acceptable range. And then the second form of competition is the vlogger who is decrying this decline in morality and virtue, citing Nietzsche, who says actually quite the opposite, that one should set about and build a new type of morality, not based on the dead Christian, Judeo-Christian type morality. We also remember from chapter 3 that moral issues are ones that we compete on. So the vlogger himself is engaging in a competition. Is it to cover up insecurity? Is it to increase his viewership, his likes, and his followers? Is it for the purpose of virtue in and of itself?
Because the more you base your worth on being superior, the more fragile your worth becomes. Every new room holds a new threat. Every taller man becomes a rival. Every viral clip becomes a test.
So here we have an admission that there is insecurity that is injected when another is present. How do we resolve those insecurities? Do we resolve them with sexism, racism, gender discrimination? Do we resolve them based on virtue? Is the virtue cited false in order to salve the insecurity that arises? Do we compete on looks maxing? Do we compete on height? These are things that we just have to acknowledge are our baser human needs. Getting rid of them, pretending they don't exist, is a path to unhealthiness. Intellectualizing them, on the other hand, is not. You have to decide which base human needs you want to meet, to do so in a socially acceptable manner, even though there'll be norms and mores against vanity and false or a lack of humility. You have needs that you need to meet, and there's a way to meet them. You can see that this vlogger himself is doing the bad but socially acceptable ego that I have been describing. He himself engages in looks maxing. He then sets out and talks about virtue and the importance of humility and transcending the self rather than superficial concerns, but he meets his needs and then he engages. He wraps his needs, the meeting of his needs, in virtue, which may or may not intersect with the actual need, as I've been describing through chapters 1 through 3. So you have base needs, but he does provide a caution here that we all need to follow. You have your needs, you meet them, hopefully in a socially acceptable manner. Norms, mores, laws have exceptions that you can follow to meet your needs. Sometimes, if you just do what the authority figure wants, even all those can be absolved. But you need to set a limit on meeting your needs. If you drink alcohol, you tell yourself you're not going to drink. If you are going to be a social activist, you tell yourself you're not going to argue with cops. If you are going to own a gun, you would better sit down and think very hard about what self-defense is within the law and when you will and you will not use that gun. If you want to be a bodybuilder, then don't do what this guy just does.
Pathetic loser Mike Van Wyck assaults Jeff Nippard and sends him to the hospital. According to reports of the incident, the assault continued after the fighting. I've never heard of this freak before, to be honest. Wish Jeff a speedy recovery in the comments.
Insecurity and arrogance are mixed together. By intellectualizing our psychology, we can achieve a balance. Walk the golden mean. Anything in moderation. But you don't exclude the possibility of meeting your needs. As a young autistic, if you saw this vlogger's video, you might turn completely the opposite way. You might decide that you don't need to shower every day, you don't need to brush your teeth every day, just because someone scorned someone else over their vanity. It's okay to be vain. If you accumulate too much fat, that becomes poisonous to your body. Visceral fat can be poisonous to your organs. There's a reason that we pursue a fit physique. So you see the red herrings that come up in our social structures that point out that our baser needs are not allowed to be met. The autistic can easily misconstrue this. And the path to meeting them sometimes is simply to wrap a vulgar base need in virtue inappropriately. Personally, I'm not sure how much I do this. I don't think I do. I think, as I said, the absence of wrapping virtue and a baser need in virtue, it may well be the base of the lack of ego strength that's the seat of my bipolar disorder. So in this, the autistic can see that there is a need to shun some norms. The vanity and humility norms need to go. They are a falsehood in all respects. They go to hide within virtue in the regular population, and being scorned for satisfying them can easily lead someone with a neurological oversensitivity to abandon them entirely. You don't do this. If you're an 8-year-old autistic, go and get yourself some hair gel, spike your hair up. If you're 20 or 30 or 40 or 50-year-old, go and get a tattoo. There is inherent shunning of humility norms in it. Getting a tattoo, it's a counterculture. And you need, as an autistic, you need to experiment with this sort of thing, but in a socially acceptable way.